I want to welcome you guys to our youth retreat. I know you're like, wait, what? I showed up to church. This is different. We actually changed our plans. We created a model back in the fall when we were planning our youth retreat, and we said, you know what? We don't want to remove the youth from the church family. We want to actually help integrate them. We want to help bring this process of true discipleship. And so we've been at Brayside for one night. We went out Friday night, and then we came back late last night, and then they all stayed at their own places, and some of them are back here. Some of them were here for the first service, and some of them I can see are here for our second service. And I just want to say, honestly, this retreat has been phenomenal. We went really hoping for two purposes. Firstly, to get away and get with God. So many of us, we go in through the mundanes, the tasks, the routines of life, and we actually never choose to intentionally just get away with God. We get away, we go on holidays, but we never get away with God. And so this was an intentional moment, and I saw students coming to meet Jesus for the first time or the millionth time, and it was honestly an amazing time. And to say I'm proud of these students is an understatement. Like, I'm incredibly proud of these students, and I'm incredibly proud of our leaders who came to serve. And then we want to build up connections as well. And let me tell you, I love our Friday nights. I love our youth nights, but they're only 2 hours long. They're only 2 hours long. And so if you ask me, I don't really connect well in 2-hour segments, and I'm an extrovert. And so picture that even more so for introverts trying to connect on a 2-hour night. And so this youth retreat, being at Brayside 24 plus hours, was a phenomenal time because it gave opportunity for connections to happen. And I was seeing our students connecting with God and connecting with each other. And it was a beautiful picture for me to witness. And it is my privilege and honor to invite our speaker who's been speaking life into not only these students, but even our leaders and even the worship team that came and joined us on the trip, spoke absolute life into us. And Scott's been a friend of mine for several years now. And I will always, you have my word. Whenever I'm bringing a guest speaker for our youth, it's not just to fill time or just to kind of, okay, Brian doesn't want to speak. Okay, no, it is with intention. It is with intention because I trust Scott to minister and to nurture these students towards the kingdom of heaven. And so it's my privilege and honor. I'll invite Scott up. You guys give him a Kingsview welcome as he comes up and shares with us this morning.
Well, good almost afternoon, Kingsview. We've actually had a great weekend away. So actually, like halfway in between here and where I live in Ingersoll is that wonderful camp we know of, Brayside. And as Brian walks out the room, I'll tell the story that he loves to tell of the first time we actually met, because it's a phenomenal story. I was the youth pastor in Ingersoll at the time, and he was graduating Bible college. And at the end of their 4 years, they did what was called a capstone tour. And so what would happen is they'd go and visit a bunch of youth pastors and kind of get like encouraged as they were heading off into their ministry. And I decided that, the word I was going to give these like fire and brimstone, ready to go young preachers was, you don't know anything. And it wasn't really my intention to do that. Like, it was fun in the moment, but like, there was just this sense of like, sometimes we get to the point where we just feel entitled because we've learned something. And so as a seasoned veteran at that point, the gray is real. It's not just for effect. And I was able to speak into these Bible college students and just say, you don't know anything. And I had to learn that the hard way. And so the greatest lesson that I taught Brian that day was like, for the first 3 years you're in ministry, you go to like conferences, you go to different things and that, and there's opportunity to speak. Don't take it. Sit down and shut up for 3 years. Okay? And so that is the memory of, he's relayed that this weekend, and I'm like, oh yeah, you were one of the guys in that room. And so he's lasted a few years in ministry, so clearly he heeded my warning, and so now he has the ability to speak up when he needs to, because he's learned a few things and knows a few things, and I honor his leadership, and I love Brian and Kat, and I've gotten to know them over the years. I've known Kat for about 9 years. She was a counselor when I was the head counselor at Brayside, so when I was invited to come and speak the retreat, Brian was like, yeah, come and speak. I'm like, that's awesome. I tolerate you so I can hang out with Kat. And I think we can all probably feel the same, right? Like, they've been here about a year now, and like, you understand. Like, you tolerate Brian because he's good at what he does, but then you get to hang out with Kat, and that just makes it all better. So we've had a great weekend. I'm so thankful for your pastors. I got to know Pastor Josh and Jordan a little bit last summer when they came to visit me at my house in Brayside, and I'm the youth director there, so I get to hang out there all summer, every summer, and that's where God is all the summer. Like, if you go to one of the other camps, like, he might visit, but he lives at Brayside. Okay, and I can say that with authority because I have the mic. That's why I have the authority, right? So, that's it. Yeah, Brian just brought me here to, like, really pump Brayside, and I don't get paid by Brayside unless it's in the summer. So when you show up there in the winter, that's just weird for me. Like, you show up and, like, you're at your summer camp and you walk out and there's snow and ice everywhere and you go, no, this is not right. My brain hurts. But I'm thankful for the opportunity to share this morning. And so at the end of the retreat, generally the fourth session is like the rally to go home, and yet the kids went home last night. So this is kind of weird. I got to bring you into where we've been for the first three sessions, and then we can unpack session 4. So the whole weekend was about being entrusted. And I'm kind of seeing in my peripheral that the screen is wrong still. There it is. Now we're back at retreat. We're entrusted with some things that the God of the universe actually has given to us. And the first one was faith. Every decision and every moment of your life actually hinges on your answer to one question. You ever imagine, like, being a part of, like, an exam? How many love school? They were like, that is just like the fondest memories of, like, the end of the semester in high school and the panic and the dread of a 3-hour exam. Imagine walking into an exam and you have one question, and then the answer to that question actually determines the rest of your life. That's a fun thought, isn't it? But that's what faith is. And the question is, what will you do with Jesus? And so we unpacked that for our students on Friday night. And I can tell you, of the 21 students, about half of them either made a first-time decision or made a serious commitment to follow the decision they'd actually made for Jesus. And you can clap now, because that's amazing. Then yesterday morning, we unpacked that God has actually entrusted us with a story. Your life is on purpose, that you have a story that God has given to you. And last night, we actually unpacked that God has entrusted us with purpose. He has designed you uniquely for a job that he has designed uniquely for you to do. And now you're all caught up. Welcome. So who is Scott? Who is this guy that's standing in front of you today? When I'm back home in Ingersoll, they call me Coach. When I walk through the high schools, they know me as Coach. The students, the staff, even other coaches go, hey, Coach, how you doing? I've been there for almost 12 years now. I'm a football coach. So in the fall, I coach football. And the rest of the year, I actually do some mental health coaching and academic coaching. And with my family, we get to be ambassadors for a number of London-based children's charities as well. I love Jesus, I love my boys, and I love sports. And sometimes it stays in that order. Jesus is almost always number one, because I'm not perfect. If the Steelers are, like, closing in on the playoffs, then I need to pray just a little bit more and go, why so many injuries? My boys are in the back row because they've backslidden. Usually they sit in the front row, but this church is different, and that's okay. The youth are all hanging back there. They actually abandoned me and, hey, can we hang out with the youth? So are they all back there? Because I don't see TJ. Oh, there he is over there, because he was over here before. All right. So in the middle back there is the other one we call Joey. He's the youngest. He's the baby. He thinks he can get away with everything because he's cute, but I'm immune, so he's understood that he can get away with anything except at home. TJ is over here. He's 14. He is my man-child and, like, the bruiser, and loves to, like, work out with his bands in the basement, and he's going to be a beast when he hits high school in the fall. And then somewhere back there is the Riley who loves his smart car. Those are my boys, and the other thing I really love is the opportunity to do what I've done this weekend. And I see students reach their God-given potential. My role, currently I'm with YFC, and I'll be with them for another season, but I'm also now the director of Movement School of Ministry in Woodstock. And basically what that means is I get to hang out with Bible college students, not just for like one night to ruin their lives, for about 4 years as we unpack what ministry looks like. And as they get their education online, they get to do practical ministry within our church. And it's just this beautiful partnership that I get to hang out with them in the fall to do. So entrusted has been our theme. This morning I'm going to talk to you that you are entrusted with a mission. And conveniently enough, the media team and promotion team has already put my sermon notes on the back wall for you. Our mission. And we're going to actually talk about that verse and where that came out of. And so that was so cool to walk in and go, God, you're up to something. We have a window of time from the day that we are born till the day that we die. And we're entrusted with a mission to accomplish in that period of time. So what's your window? Psalm 139, 13 to 16 says, you made all the delicate inner parts of my body. You knit me together in my mother's womb. Thank you for making me so wonderfully complex. Look at your neighbor and say, you are so wonderfully complex. Your workmanship is marvelous. How I know it well. You watched me as I was being formed in utter seclusion, as I was woven together in the dark of the womb. You saw me before I was born. Every day of my life was recorded in your book. Every moment was laid out before a single day had passed. Every moment of your life, God saw before a single breath was ever taken. See, this life is a series of experiences and opportunities that are unique to us. No two of our windows are the same. See, even people that were born in Brantford, Ontario, God's city, back in 1980 on August 5th, everybody else that was born that day does not have the same window that I do. In fact, like 2 of my 3 boys, because we were in ministry for 20 years now, we've kind of bounced around a bit, but 2 of the 3 were born in the same hospital that I was in Brantford. They don't have the same window as me. And in case you're wondering, yes, TJ is the odd one out. He was born in Collingwood and loves to tell people that I was born in Collingwood. But you don't have the same window just because you have the same birthday. You don't have the same window just because you have the same family. You don't have the same window just because you have the same zip code. Our windows overlap with countless people each and every day, and I believe each day has a purpose that is greatly significant to somebody. But our window is ours and ours alone. If you know anything about windows, maybe you know this, maybe you don't, they get dirty. I discovered that like even the outside of house windows get dirty. And especially car windows. They get very dirty. How many like have like young children, or maybe you were young children, like you like drew in the frosted side and like your parents scolded you for like messing up the window? I'm like, I'll just wipe it off. And like even more streaks and like, not personal experience, come on. We get messy windows, especially in this desperation time we call winter. I saw a meme recently and it was so accurate, it was painful. We are actually right now in 3rd winter. It's like preceded by fake spring and second winter, and then after 3rd winter comes mud season, and then spring, and then summer, and then fake fall, and then second summer, and like we have like 11 seasons in Canada. And I love that I'm Canadian. I'm Canadian to the core. I mentioned that I love sports. However, hockey is not in the top 3. Sorry. Now, I love Olympic hockey. I love cheering for Team Canada. I love junior hockey, like the World Juniors. Like I love, like if you got Canada on your chest, I'm cheering for you. If you're just part of the NHL, I could really care less. Sorry. Football, baseball, basketball, everything else. But I still am Canadian to the core because I understand the torment of our seasons where we have like 6 months of winter and 6 months of construction. We understand this. The part about winter I hate is that it's cold and there's snow everywhere. Now, thankfully, I got here today. I was like, wow, it's like spring has already showed up at Kingsview. God has smiled down on us today. This is incredible. And like, I'm sure we'll get dumped with snow at some point in the next 2 weeks because that's just Canada. I'm actually convinced that snow is a direct result of the sin of Adam and Eve. Don't challenge my theology on that, but think about it. I can't imagine cold, snowy winters when you are walking around with no clothes. Come on. Some of the worst winter driving you can experience is along the highways, and we have like such incredible highways. I live right on the 401 just before London, and so like London, Sarnia, and then the 402, like those are just terrible drives in the winter. Not as bad as the 400 going up to like Wonderland. I'm glad I can do that in the summer and not in the winter. But when you're passing a transport truck, how many have experienced this? And you're like, I've got to get around this thing, and like just the slush and the snow and the nasty stuff that's all over the roads just like cakes your car. And you use like 3/4 of the bottle of your windshield washer fluid. There is no more panic. Like, I don't panic when I see the gas light come on. I panic when like you're out of washer fluid. I'm like, shoot, I'm in like the middle of nowhere. And I've actually once had to pull over and like use the snow to like wash off my windshield so I could get to a gas station and actually fill up that tank. Maybe you feel, though, that the window you're living right now is like that windshield, constantly having a barrage of stuff being tossed your way. Thankfully, Jesus actually knew that would happen. John 16:33. If you look through John 15 and 16, it's filled with red letters because that means Jesus is talking. And he gets to the end of this, and he says, I've told you all of this so that you may have peace in me. Oh, okay, that's awesome. And then he says, here on earth you will have many trials and sorrows. That doesn't go together. You will have peace in me. And we like think butterflies and flowers and like candy rainbows and you will have trials and sorrows. Oh man. I wish just once Jesus was actually wrong when he said something. Like every time he speaks, like it is just like, you understand the Bible is full of truth, and it's truth for our lives, and it applies to us today. And I just wish just that one verse he was like, oh, sorry, I was just kidding about that. But in this life, you will have trials and sorrows. There's comfort that comes because that's not the end of the verse. I told the youth this weekend that Jesus likes big butts. But take heart before you start thinking about Jesus' butt, because that's weird in church. Don't do that. But take heart, because I have overcome the world. I've told you all of this because I want to give you peace. And by the way, stuff is going to happen. You're going to have trials. You are going to have sorrows. And you know, like when Jesus promises something, it's actually going to happen. And it's like, oh, goody. He's like, why did you have to say that? You ever have someone like just speak like incredible truth into your life, and you get to the part where it's just like that, ouch. And then there's an amen like much, much later, but that ouch just really hurts. I'm like, oh, why did you have to say that? The comfort comes in that I have overcome the world. See, it's frustrating knowing that sometimes there's just nothing else you can do but hold on to God. That's incredibly frustrating for someone like me who's just like, I want to figure it out, I want to be able to fix it, and I want to just go. And God says, no, sometimes you just not just have to hold on, but have to be held. Sometimes we just want to work and we just hold on so tightly, and God goes, no, just let me hold you. And that's where we found ourselves in 2013. Throughout the course of that year, we had some incredible moments as a family. In the spring, we became foster parents to a little girl and her 16-year-old mom. That was a wild ride. And then over the course of the summer, we were going on mission trips and we were going on vacations. And one of the mission trips that we had went to was Cape Breton, Nova Scotia. And as much as I love Ontario, that is God's country out there. Like, God just lives there when he's not at Brayside. Okay, that's how that works. My dad was born and raised in New Waterford, Cape Breton Island, and he is the son of a coal miner. And so we went out there to Sydney and Glace Bay and New Waterford, and we were doing ministry for the week. And we got to the end, and the guy that was running the church said, hey, I want to talk to you about a church I want to plant in New Waterford. And I really want you to consider coming out. I'm like, that is so crazy. Like, that is my dad's hometown. My cousins still live there. Side note, when you're 14 years old and don't know who your cousins are, don't start getting attracted to girls. Just saying. My dad loves that story because he's like, that girl you've been hanging out with this week, like, you know that's your cousin, right? I'm like, I hate my life. The mini putts and, like, the soda shops and, like, yeah, that's your cousin, dude. I'm like, dang it. Can you give me a little bit of a heads up? Like, come on. Ruined my life. So we get back from that, and in September, we begin praying through this opportunity. And we're like, you know what? Give me a month to think about this. Like, I'm uprooting my family and moving from Ontario to Nova Scotia. I'm going to have to pray on that for a little bit. Like, that's not just an instant yes. So as we were going through that, we get into October. And our son, Joey, was 4 at the time, we were taking him to our family doctor for a follow-up for an audiology appointment. We were trying to check his hearing, and because not just was he not listening to me, as many 4-year-olds do, we just wanted to make sure that he could actually hear. So we were in this follow-up appointment, and the doctor looks at Joey and goes, I don't really like the way he looks. I'm like, well, neither do I, but what's that got to do with anything? Like, back off. He's 4. Come on, he'll grow out of it. He goes, we need to get some blood work here. And so we did that, and about 11 o'clock that night, we got a phone call from one of the nurses in the doctor's office, and they said, we need you to get your family, get your son to the hospital right now. You need to get to McMaster. And I'm like, no. Like, it's 11:30 at night, he's sleeping. Like, no, I'll go in the morning. And they're like, if you don't take him right now, we're sending an ambulance to get him. I'm like, oh, that sounds serious. Still going to argue, though. I'm like, we live in Ingersoll. I'm nowhere near McMaster. Like, why not Woodstock? Woodstock's not big enough. Well, what about London? They're like, you're closer to London? I'm like, yeah, I'm half an hour to London. Problem is, my family doctor is still in Brantford, so they thought we were closer to McMaster. They're like, okay, get to London, get there now. And so we went, and by midnight, we were in the hospital. All night, we spent in an isolation room in the back of the emergency department in the children's wing of the London hospital. And as doctors paraded in and out throughout the night, poking and prodding my 4-year-old son laying there on a bed, they came in and said, we're sorry to tell you, your son has leukemia. And as a pastor, I went to the thought of my friends who were also pastors that had just lost their daughter, and another pastor friend that had lost their child as well. And I go, we're next. Hope was not in that moment because fear had enveloped me. As we began to progress through those treatment early days, we were told that his success rate was 95%. I'm like, okay, cool. That's better than 50-50. I can take a little bit of peace in that. And within 48 hours, he'd already had a device implanted into his chest. We called it his Iron Man because it delivered all the medicine to his body. So we begin to kind of like unpack what this is going to look like. Okay, now we have a kid with cancer, and we still have an 11-year-old and a 7-year-old at home, and so we're trying to balance all this stuff. And then over the course of the next 4 weeks, my wife gets sick. It begins with a stress seizure a week after his diagnosis because we didn't sleep for a wink, really, in that first week. And then the only way to diagnose a stress seizure is to put them into a medical coma for 2 weeks and undiagnose everything else. And so they undiagnosed everything else and went, yeah, this is a stress seizure. We can wake your wife up and everything's going to be okay. Cool, okay. These 2 weeks sucked, but I can handle that. And so Doretta woke up and she was asking instantly about Joey. I'm like, okay, cool. All the things in her mind was good. Like, she understood where she was and what she was doing. And then we had a visit on October 30th. So this is now 3 or 4 weeks after his diagnosis. We're visiting with Doretta, me and the older two boys, because Joey's immune compromised. We can't go anywhere with him. And I get home, run our kids program that night, and I get a phone call from the hospital. Get back to London, your wife is critical. I'm like, that does not line up with where I was 6 hours ago. Like, do you have the right number? And they're like, you need to get here now. And I remember racing. It's a 45-minute drive that I may have done in 15 or 20. And I got there, and they're like, your wife is stable. I'm like, couldn't you have called me back and let me know that? So, like, just give me a little bit of peace along the way. But a week later, there was no brain activity, and my wife passed away. So here I am. My 4-year-old has cancer. My 7 and 11 and 4-year-old now don't have their mom. And I'm still supposed to be a pastor. I'm still supposed to minister. I'm supposed to love God. Are you kidding me? In this world, you will have trials and sorrows. But take heart. I have overcome the world. See, my story can certainly be described as tragic. 4 weeks in 2013 completely turned my life upside down. We quite literally walked through hell, but we never walked alone. In desperate times, holding on to God is all that we have, and when we live through that kind of a season, we actually understand more than most that when you walk through that season and God is all you have, God is all you need. Psalms 34 says, the Lord hears his people when they call to him for help. He rescues them from all their troubles. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted. He rescues those whose spirits are crushed. That verse was actually delivered to me in a card in those early days, and where I was just going, God, where are you? I don't see you. I don't feel you. I don't sense you, and I hate you right now. How dare you do this to me? How entitled was I? Come on. How dare you do this to me? Because I thought I had the authority to tell God what he was doing and how he was supposed to run my life. Man, I was wrong. It still was a terrible season. But God is faithful. He's right there. And so this note was delivered to me, and just kind of out of the blue by a stranger knocks on my door and goes, we've heard your story. We're praying for you. Still to this day, I have no idea who that person was. But I have the card in one of my folders. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted, and he rescues those whose spirits are crushed. Can I tell you, I had some messy windows. I had some messy days. I had some messy months. I had a few messy years. Because we continued to walk through Joey's treatment. In fact, Doretta passed away on a Tuesday. On Friday, we were in the hospital for a 12-hour treatment day. That was probably the longest day of my life. He wasn't able to eat because he had a procedure that day, and so you have a grumpy, upset 4-year-old who is hungry and is already on steroids at this point, and so was like literally hulking out. And that was my day for 12 hours. And I go, God, where are you in these moments? But I look now and I look back at my story, and it's actually opened up windows of opportunities where I get to have conversations and influence no one else on the planet can have. Why? Because God can use the darkest moments of our lives and bring life to someone else. See, as tragic as our story is, there is hope even in the midst of that. We were praying for a miracle for Doretta. We didn't receive our miracle, but 4 other families did. She donated organs. She was actually a rare blood type. And so those 4 families received life when they had been given a death sentence. The darkest moments of our lives can actually bring life to someone else. In the last few years, I've sat with families grieving the loss of a student. Multiple times. It's ridiculous how many times I've had to sit with a family, and either a player of mine or a former player has passed away suddenly. I've spoken in high school health classrooms, in a public school, and they said, we just need you to come and share how you were so resilient. I said, I'll come and share, but you know that means I'm sharing my faith, because that's the only thing that got me through. And they said, we don't care, coach. Whatever it was that worked for you is going to work for somebody else. Giddy up, let's do this. I've been sought out by complete strangers. I had a phone call a couple weeks ago from another youth pastor who I've never met, and his family is now starting to walk through the journey of cancer with their son. How they got my number, I don't even know. Just a friend of a friend of a friend goes, I know a guy you can talk to. Now, in the midst of this, we've actually had some incredible experiences too. Joey had his Make-A-Wish trip, and we got to go to Pittsburgh. And he was a Pittsburgh Steeler for a day, a year and a half ago now. And so when he was first told that we were going to have a Make-A-Wish trip, he was 4 years old. I'm teaching him how to say Pro Bowl. Because Pro Bowl, at that point, if you know football, is the all-star game that is actually in Hawaii. So, like, not only do I get a trip to Hawaii, I get to hang out with all the all-star football team. Then they moved it to Orlando. I'm like, forget it. We'll just be Steelers for a day. I mean, Joey will be a Steeler for a day. It wasn't Dad's trip, I swear. But here I see this, like, 9-year-old kid playing catch with Ben Roethlisberger, the quarterback from the Steelers, and taking snaps from their all-star center and hanging out on their practice field and then being a VIP at the game and getting to hang out on the sidelines before the game. He's also been an ambassador while he was 9 years old in the course of 1 year. Okay, we're in that London area, so he was able to do a puck drop for the London Knights. He was then asked to come and do the first pitch for the London Majors. He was then asked to do a ceremonial tip-off for the London Lightning, the basketball team. And to kick off his Make-A-Wish, we actually tricked him into telling him he was the ambassador for Make-A-Wish at the Western Mustangs game to do a kickoff. And so he did the ceremony, a kickoff, turns around, the banner says, you're going to Pittsburgh. So in the course of 1 year, this kid got to do all 4 of these things. It was the grand slam of ceremonial tip-offs and experiences. We've flown to Disney as part of a champion year. So in 2019, Joey was the champion for the hospital, and we got to be ambassadors. He's actually, this news will come out in a little bit. You get a preview. He is the first $1 million champion for Walmart for our area. And so what that means is the 24 Walmarts in our area raised over $1 million. With his story and picture plastered all over the place, I started shopping like anywhere but, well, actually I started shopping in Brantford because they were outside. They were the McMaster area. I'm like, I don't want to see Joey's face when I go to Walmart. And we got to hang out with Mickey Mouse. How cool is that? See, I'm fully aware that all of these things and the opportunities I have like today to come and share our story, they actually stem from that tragic month we had in 2013. And I would trade it all in an instant to have my life back the way I thought it was going to be. But I don't have that choice. Instead, my prayer then becomes that my story ripples through eternity. That people would come to the saving grace of Jesus because he is on the throne, he is near to the brokenhearted, and he alone, catch this, is going to be bringing meaning out of my mess, purpose out of my pain, and hope in the middle of hopelessness. That's who Jesus is. That's how good Jesus is. That's what he can actually do for your life. In the midst of the dirtiest window I've ever experienced, the darkest days, he says, there is hope. There's purpose. I have a plan if you'll trust me. We search for God in the midst of the chaos, and the times I actually remember his presence the strongest was late at night in Joey's hospital room when he was admitted for one fever or another. And in those moments, the quiet can actually become overwhelming and deafening. But I found peace. I understand what it is to have a peace that passes understanding. I can't explain it to you, but I can say it's real. I don't understand it. In those moments where everything around me was crumbling, there was peace. I sensed God was telling me that Joey was going to be okay, and he was going to use our lives for something incredible. We're entrusted with a mission. We're given a window to work in. That window is yours and yours alone. It's going to get messy, but your window matters. I don't pretend to know any of your stories, but I know that as a church, you've been walking through some deep waters, some dark days. I walked through some of those as well. let me give you a little bit of hope. 6.5 years later, here's what I can tell you. Joey is cancer-free. He's actually no longer considered a cancer patient. He is now in what they call aftercare. And so 2 weeks ago, we went to his first aftercare appointment. And remembering back 6.5 years when he was going weekly to the hospital or having to stay for weekends, they got to the end of the appointment and they said, see you next year. So he now goes once a year, and he will do that for the rest of his life, not because they're looking for cancer anymore. They're now looking for the side effects of all the treatment and medication that he was on. And so they continue to follow him just to make sure that the side effects aren't too great for his body to handle. Riley and TJ both graduate in June, one from high school, one from elementary school. We get to go on these crazy adventures. A few weeks ago, we went and drove into Detroit and saw the Raptors play in the Oven, which is now the new place for the Pistons to play. And it's such a crazy, cool stadium, and the Raptors won, so that was great. Life continues to move forward. And still sometimes there are 2 steps forward and 1 step back. But I've learned that's still 1 step forward. God is all about moving us forward. My God continues to be who he says he is. My God is reliable. My God is faithful. My God is comfort and peace and strength when I don't have any. In my weakest moments, he was there. My God has never forsook me. I have been able to walk, and when I couldn't walk, he carried me. Because my God continues to be who he says he is. And I've learned the mission of my life has not changed. The mission of my life is still go. Matthew 28:18-20. Then Jesus came to them and said, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Therefore go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. And surely I am with you always to the very end of the age. When I walked in this morning, I saw our mission on the back. Kingsview is about making disciples that make disciples. I've been preaching make disciples that make disciples for years. In fact, yesterday morning, I'm sitting in the bed in the dorm at Braeside and I've already known I'm preaching this message. And I get an email from Korea. One of my students from Collingwood is now living in Korea and is one of the staff of a Christian Montessori school in the middle of Korea. And we've been thinking about you and praying for your family. I hope you and the boys are doing great. I will always remember the story you told us about the unseen legacy. And it just pushes me forward. The unseen legacy comes out of this verse. Making disciples that make disciples, that make disciples, that make disciples, that make disciples. See, the leaders that have poured into my life over the years, you'll never meet. Some of them live all around the world. Some of them reside in heaven. You'll never meet them. But their legacy continues today as I impart hope and comfort and strength to you through God's word. The students and families I've poured into are a direct result of the legacy of those leaders and what they've shared with me. I wouldn't be in ministry today if it wasn't for leaders sitting me down and saying, no, you are called to do this. You are going to have hard and difficult times. And this was 20 years ago when I was hanging out with Skip at New Life in Brantford. Pray for me. I've known him for 25 years. Pray for Jess. My legacy continues as I am used by God to bring hope, encouragement, and leadership to those around me. This is your window, Kingsview. Individually and as a church, this is your window. Clean it when it gets messy. Honor the opportunities that you are given with the experiences you've faced. Someone else's life may be greatly influenced by your obedience to the window God has given you. You have a window. You have a purpose. You have a story. And through Jesus, we have a faith. Kingsview, there is hope for your future, no matter what your present looks like. I am uniquely situated to have conversations that no one else on this planet can have. Can I tell you something? So are you. The conversations you will have this week, I can't have. Conversations I can have this week, you can't have. We are created with a purpose that is so unique to us. And each and every one of us has that purpose, but that purpose is part of a greater mission. And that mission is simple. Go. Tell your story. Make disciples. Teach them what Jesus has done in your life, and teach them to then go and do the same. That's when our purpose and our mission are together in harmony. Your mission has not changed. Jesus is hope to the hopeless. He is purpose in pain. He is there for you no matter what you are walking through. He will bring you out of the messy window, and your influence to someone else's window becomes greater. You are uniquely situated to have conversations no one else on the planet can have. Pastor Josh.
There's really nothing more. I mean, there's nothing more I can add to that. You know, first service, second service, your story, your life, your example, it speaks volumes. I will add this, just one thing, and then I'm going to have you pray over us and pray for us. Back in the summer, late summer, early fall, I remember sitting down with Pastor Brian, and we were just trying to figure out this youth retreat. And in trying to figure out the youth retreat, we were just talking through some things, and we threw out the idea, because we recognize, as he said earlier, that there's a bit of a disconnect. You know, youth retreats, they often go and they're gone for the whole weekend, and then, you know, we're like, oh, we're missing our youth on Sunday. They're gone, and then they come back, and it's just like they're there and we're here. How do we bridge that better? And so we thought, well, why don't we do the last session on a Sunday morning? And that way we bring the youth here. The whole congregation gets to hear from the speaker that weekend. And it now becomes more of a discipleship building thing. Now it becomes more of just a community. Like, we're all in this together. This is our family. And so I really do think that we've achieved that to a certain extent. I'm very pleased with it. But here's what's interesting is God's timing. You see, when we were talking about this, and when you said, hey, I want Scott, I'm like, yeah, no, he's got a powerful testimony. You're like, and then Scott's like, well, I don't really speak to youth retreats. I don't really do that much anymore. I'm really busy in this area. But God knew. God knew on February 23rd, 2020, exactly what our church, what we as a people would be walking through, what you as individuals would be walking through. And all the way back then, he had set it up and ordained it so that today would happen. Today is not an accident. It's not just an afterthought. It's ordained by God. And if you want to get really spiritual, he ordained this even before the summer, even before you and I existed. He ordained it from before the foundations of the world. He ordained this day to happen. He knew that your story would connect with our church, would connect with your story. That's how good our God is. That's how much he cares. This is God's design. This was by his design. This was his purpose. And all he asked us to do was just step into it. So that's what we did. We stepped in and allowed God to do what only God could do. So you're here today, and you're hearing the words coming out of Scott's mouth, and whatever your story is, whatever your windshield, whatever that's looking like, if you hear anything today, you need to know that there's hope. Because of Jesus Christ, there is hope. If we don't have Jesus, no hope. If we know Jesus, hope. I think there's a license plate that says no Jesus, no hope. K-N-O-W. No Jesus, N-O, Jesus, no hope. It's simple. It's quite simple, actually, really. Scott, would you pray over us? Pray that God would restore hope for the hopeless. I don't even know what you said. However you said it, that was really, really good, man. If you could just pray that over us, that'd be fantastic. Go for it.
You stand with me today and we'll pray. God, today I thank you that you make sense of our mess. God, I thank you that you bring purpose in the midst of pain. I thank you that you are hope to the hopeless. I thank you that you are peace that passes understanding. I thank you that you are near to the brokenhearted. I thank you for your faithfulness. God, I thank you for this moment that you knew would happen. God, we are so humbled when we stand in the middle of your will and we just, by obedience, walk and you just do everything else we could never imagine to do. God, in the days ahead, I pray your peace and your strength over Kingsview, over Pastor Josh and Jordan as they lead. God, you would give them another measure of empathy and understanding. God, you would give them comfort as they are comforting. I pray you give them peace as they speak life. God, for each and every one of the stories that are represented here, God, I pray that today would be a reminder that you are the author of every story. You are the author and the perfecter of our faith. That through your Son, Jesus, we not only have hope, but we have life and life eternal. God, we thank you for today. We thank you what you are doing. We thank you for the lives that you impacted this weekend at Retreat. And God, we just seal those moments, God, that they would not be monuments, but they would be movements in those students' lives. In our lives today as well, that we would move forward where you are calling us. In Jesus' name, amen.